The discovery. The Galactic Council's chamber was alive with whispers. Representatives from dozens of species filled the grand hall, their voices blending into a nervous hum. A strange object had appeared on their long-range scanners, moving steadily towards the central region of the galaxy. It wasn't just any object. It was a fleet. "Have we identified them yet?" asked Chancellor Voro, his sharp voice cutting through the noise. The reptilian leader of the council leaned forward, his green scales shimmering under the artificial lights. "Who dares send such a massive fleet into our territory without notice?" The lead analyst, a small rodent-like being named Crix, stepped forward. He adjusted his translator device nervously. "Chancellor, we have analyzed the data extensively," he began, his voice shaking. "The fleet, it doesn't match any known species. The designs are completely unique, primitive in appearance, but somehow advanced." The room erupted into chaos. Representatives shouted over one another, their faces displaying a mix of fear and confusion. The Galactic Council had existed for thousands of years, and they prided themselves on cataloging every civilization in the known universe. The idea that a fleet could appear out of nowhere, belonging to an unknown species, was unthinkable. Silence. Voro's voice boomed across the hall. The chamber fell quiet, though the tension remained thick. "Crix, are you saying this fleet is from an unregistered species?" Crix nodded slowly. "Yes, Chancellor. But there is more. Their trajectory suggests they are heading straight for our central planet." Gasps echoed through the room. The central planet was the heart of the Galactic Council, a symbol of unity and peace. No species had ever dared to approach it unannounced. "How many ships?" Voro demanded. Crix hesitated, his large eyes darting around the room. "Thousands," he said finally. "Their formation is disciplined, military." The tension in the room turned to outright panic. Chancellor Voro raised his hand, signaling the Council's security force to lock the doors. "We need answers," he growled. "And we need them now." Meanwhile, in the cold expanse of space, the fleet moved with eerie precision. The ships were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. They lacked the sleek curves of traditional spacecraft, instead appearing rugged and functional. Each vessel bristled with weapons, their surfaces covered in battle scars. The largest ship, a massive behemoth that dwarfed the others, led the formation. Inside the Galactic Council's observation station, Chief Scientist Lyra stared at the live feed of the fleet on her screen. Her multi-limbed body twitched with nervous energy. "Primitive," she muttered under her breath, "yet efficient. How is that possible?" Her assistant, a bird-like being named Ral, tilted his head. "Do you think they're hostile?" he asked. Lyra didn't answer immediately. She zoomed in on the lead ship, studying its design. It was clearly built for war, but there was something else, something that didn't make sense. "I don't know," she admitted, "but we're about to find out." Back in the council chamber, the debate raged on. "We should send a fleet to intercept them," shouted one representative, his voice full of fear. "We cannot allow them to reach our planet." "And risk provoking them," countered another. "What if they're more powerful than we are?" Chancellor Voro slammed his fist on the table. "Enough," he roared. "We will send a diplomatic message. If they respond, we will decide our next course of action. If they do not, then we prepare for war." The council reluctantly agreed, and the message was sent. It was a standard greeting, translated into hundreds of languages, designed to establish contact without hostility. Then they waited. Minutes turned into hours. The fleet continued its steady approach, showing no signs of slowing down or acknowledging the message. Anxiety grew with each passing moment. Finally, the council received a reply. It was brief and to the point. "We come to speak." The room fell silent. "Speak about what?" murmured one of the representatives. "We must proceed with caution," Voro said. "Prepare the council chamber for their arrival. We will meet these humans face to face." The names spread quickly through the council's ranks. Humans. It was a name that carried weight, though no one could explain why. As the fleet approached, the council prepared for the unknown. On the lead ship, Captain Adrian Ross stood on the bridge, gazing at the distant planet on the view screen. "They've responded," said his communications officer. "They're ready to meet." Ross nodded. "Good," he said. "It's time they learned who we are." His crew exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of pride and determination. Humanity had come a long way to reach this point. They had faced extinction, rebuilt their world, and now they were ready to make their mark on the galaxy. As the fleet drew closer, the Galactic Council watched with bated breath. The discovery of humanity was only the beginning. What came next would change the galaxy forever. A glimpse of the fleet. The Galactic Council's observation deck had never been so crowded. Delegates, scientists, and military strategists packed the room, their eyes glued to the massive display that showed the human fleet in vivid detail. Each passing second brought the fleet closer to the Council's central planet, and the tension in the room was palpable. Chief Scientist Lyra stood at the center of the room, her multi-limbed form still except for the occasional twitch of her antennae. The fleet's design continued to baffle her. "Magnify the lid ship," she instructed, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. The screen shifted, zooming in on the massive flagship. It was a colossal vessel, nearly 5 times the size of the Council's largest warship. Its surface was a patchwork of metals, with scorch marks and dents that spoke of countless battles. Yet it moved with a grace that defied its rugged appearance. "How can something so crude be so efficient?" Lyra muttered. Ral, her assistant, tapped on his datapad, running simulations. "Their engines are producing output levels that surpass our own by at least 30%. And their formation. It's military grade, but there's a level of unpredictability in their movements. It's almost like they're adapting as they move." "Adaptation is a sign of intelligence," Lyra replied. Her gaze remained fixed on the screen. "But who are they? And why are they coming here?" Inside the Galactic Council chamber, Chancellor Voro was locked in heated discussion with the Military Council. "We cannot simply wait for them to arrive," General Kor bellowed, his massive, armored form towering over the others. "A fleet of this size entering our territory unannounced is an act of aggression. We should intercept them now, while we still have the advantage." "Advantage?" Voro shot back. "Have you seen their fleet? If their technology is as advanced as it appears, attacking them could lead to our destruction. We cannot afford a war we don't understand." The room murmured in uneasy agreement. Voro turned to Crix, the lead analyst. "What else do we know about these humans?" Crix hesitated, his whiskers twitching. "Not much, Chancellor. Their fleet's energy signatures are unlike anything in our database, and their communication, it's direct, simple, yet precise. No posturing, no elaborate codes. And that doesn't worry you?" Kor growled. "It does," Crix admitted. "It's as if they have nothing to hide. Or worse, they don't think they need to." The human fleet continued its approach. On board the flagship, Captain Adrian Ross stood on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back. The vast expanse of space stretched before him, the Galactic Council's central planet now visible as a pale dot on the horizon. "Status report," Ross commanded. "All ships are holding formation," replied Lieutenant Mara, her voice steady. "Scanners are detecting heightened activity on the planet. They're watching us closely." "As they should be," Ross said with a faint smile. "They've never seen anything like us before." Mara hesitated. "Do you think they'll attack, sir?" Ross's smile faded. "If they're wise, they won't. But wisdom is not universal. Keep the fleet on high alert. If they make a move, we respond." "Understood, sir." On the central planet, the Council prepared for the humans' arrival. The docking bay was reinforced with additional security, and the meeting chamber was surrounded by armed guards. No one knew what to expect, and the air was thick with tension. Lyra watched from a high observation deck as the first of the human ships entered the atmosphere. The flagship descended slowly, its engines glowing with an otherworldly blue light. It was a sight both awe-inspiring and terrifying. "They're here," Ral whispered. The ship landed with a heavy thud, its landing gear sinking into the reinforced platform. A ramp extended, and a group of figures emerged. They were humanoid, clad in sleek, utilitarian suits that seemed to double as armor. At their head was Captain Ross, his piercing gaze sweeping across the gathered crowd. Lyra couldn't help but notice the way he carried himself, with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. But there was something else in his eyes, something that unsettled her. "They look like us," Ral murmured, his feathers ruffling. "No," Lyra replied softly. "They look like survivors." Captain Ross stopped at the edge of the ramp, his officers flanking him. He raised a hand in what seemed to be a gesture of peace. "Members of the Galactic Council," he began, his voice amplified by a translator device. "I am Captain Adrian Ross of the United Human Fleet. We come in peace, but we also come with purpose." His words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. The gathered representatives exchanged uneasy glances. "And what purpose is that?" Chancellor Voro demanded, stepping forward. Ross's gaze locked onto the Chancellor. "To ensure that the galaxy knows who we are, and to remind you of something you may have forgotten." "And what is that?" Voro pressed. Ross's expression hardened. "That survival is not a right. It's a fight." The chamber fell silent, the weight of his words settling over them like a storm. The humans had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. The shock of humanity. The meeting chamber of the Galactic Council was eerily quiet as Captain Adrian Ross's words settled over the room. The representatives of dozens of species exchanged uncertain glances. "Survival is not a right." The phrase lingered, heavy with implications. Chancellor Voro was the first to break the silence. His sharp, reptilian eyes narrowed. "Captain Ross," he began, his voice steady but firm, "your words suggest a history of conflict. Are you here to wage war, or to avoid it?" Ross stood tall, his expression unwavering. "Neither," he replied. "We are here to ensure the survival of our species and to forge alliances if necessary. But let me be clear, humanity does not bow to threats, nor do we shy away from challenges." The chamber erupted into murmurs. A representative from the Avian Syndicate, her feathers shimmering in the artificial light, raised a wing to speak. "You speak boldly, Captain. Yet we have no record of your people. Where have you been hiding?" Ross's gaze shifted to her, his eyes cold but calm. "We weren't hiding," he said. "We were fighting." The revelation sent shockwaves through the room. Lyra, watching from the observation deck above, felt her antennae twitch uncontrollably. "Fighting what?" she muttered to herself. Her assistant Ral seemed to echo her thoughts. "What could they have been fighting that we never detected?" he asked. Lyra didn't answer. Instead, she zoomed in on the humans standing behind Ross. Their armor, though sleek, bore the unmistakable marks of battle. Scratches, dents, and scorch marks covered their suits, each telling a story of survival. In the chamber, Ross continued, "We come from a world on the brink of collapse. Our planet was ravaged by war, environmental disaster, and invaders who saw us as weak. We were nearly extinguished. But humanity—" He paused, letting the weight of his words hang. "Humanity is not so easily destroyed." Crix, the lead analyst, stood and adjusted his translator device. "You mean to say your species faced extinction and yet emerged with such advanced technology? That defies logic." Ross allowed himself a small, wry smile. "Desperation breeds innovation, analyst Crix. We learned to adapt, to overcome. While others sought peace in stagnation, we thrived in chaos." The room fell silent again. The implications were clear. The humans were not just survivors. They were conquerors of adversity. As the discussion continued, Lyra's focus shifted to the flagship on the display screen. Her mind raced with questions. How could a species so unknown possess such power? And why had they chosen this moment to reveal themselves? Ral broke her train of thought. "Chief, look at this," he said, pointing to a series of readings on his datapad. "They're ship's energy signatures. They're fluctuating, almost like they're scanning us in return." "Scanning for what?" Lyra asked, her voice tinged with concern. "Weaknesses, maybe, or compatibility," Ral suggested hesitantly. Lyra's antennae twitched again. "Prepare a deeper analysis. I want to know everything about those fluctuations. If they're studying us, we'll study them right back." Back in the chamber, Chancellor Voro leaned forward. "You speak of survival and strength, Captain Ross. But what do you seek from us? If you're here to forge alliances, why should we trust a species we've never known?" Ross met his gaze without flinching. "Because your galaxy is not as safe as you think," he said. "The threats we face are not unique to Earth. They are out there, lurking in the shadows of the universe. And when they find you, it will be humanity standing between you and extinction." The chamber exploded into chaos. Representatives shouted over one another, their voices a mix of fear, skepticism, and anger. Voro raised a clawed hand, demanding silence. "You claim to be protectors," Voro said, his tone skeptical. "But how do we know you are not the threat?" Ross took a step forward, his presence commanding. "We could have attacked without warning," he said simply. "But we didn't. We chose diplomacy. That should tell you everything you need to know about our intentions." The room quieted again, though the unease remained. Voro's eyes narrowed. "Very well, Captain. We will hear what you have to say. But know this, the Galactic Council does not bow to ultimatums." Ross inclined his head slightly. "And humanity does not offer them lightly." As the meeting adjourned, Lyra's analysis team sent her the preliminary results of their deeper scan. Her eyes widened as she read the data. "Chief," Ral asked, noticing her reaction. "Their technology," she murmured. "It's not just advanced. It's adaptive, alive. Whatever powers those ships isn't purely mechanical." Ral's feathers ruffled in alarm. "What does that mean?" Lyra didn't answer. Instead, she stared at the human flagship on the screen, a deep sense of foreboding settling in her chest. The humans had revealed their resilience, their strength, but what they hadn't revealed might be even more dangerous. A message like no other. The Galactic Council's grand meeting hall buzzed with tension as representatives filed back in. The humans had requested to address the Council directly, a bold move that unsettled many. For a species newly discovered, their confidence was unnerving. Chancellor Voro took his place at the head of the assembly, his clawed hands resting on the polished stone table. "Let us hear them out," he announced, his voice resonating through the chamber. "But remain vigilant. Words can be as dangerous as weapons." The main screen flickered to life, displaying Captain Adrian Ross and his delegation. Ross's expression was calm but commanding, his sharp eyes scanning the room as if weighing every individual present. Behind him stood his officers, their silence more imposing than any words they could have spoken. "Members of the Galactic Council," Ross began, his voice steady. "Thank you for granting us this audience. We come bearing not threats, but truths." The hall was silent, save for the hum of the translators working in real time. Ross continued, "Humanity's story is one of survival against impossible odds. Our world was once like many of yours, thriving, united, complacent. But then came the wars, the plagues, and the invaders. We were pushed to the brink of extinction, and it was in that darkness that we found our strength." A representative from the Aquatic Alliance, her translucent skin shimmering under the light, raised a hand. "Captain Ross, your resilience is admirable, but what relevance does your story have to us? We are not your enemies." Ross inclined his head. "You are correct. You are not our enemies. But the threats that nearly destroyed us are not unique to Earth. They are out there, waiting, watching. We come to warn you. and if you are willing, to prepare you. Lyra, watching from the observation deck, leaned closer to the monitor. There was something in Ross's tone, an urgency that felt genuine, yet calculated. "He's not telling us everything," she muttered. Raoul glanced at her, his feathers flaring slightly. "Do you think they're withholding information?" "Without a doubt," Lyra replied. "The question is, why?" Back in the chamber, Ross gestured to one of his officers. The man stepped forward, placing a device on the table before activating it. A holographic projection filled the room, showing the swirling mass of darkness. Tendrils of shadow reached out, consuming stars and planets with terrifying ease. "This," Ross said grimly, "is what we call the abyss." Gasps filled the room as the projection zoomed in, revealing the remnants of destroyed civilizations. Broken ships floated aimlessly in the void, their once proud structures reduced to rubble. "The abyss is not a natural phenomenon," Ross continued. "It is a force, sentient, malevolent, and ever-expanding. We fought it and survived, but not without cost. Entire fleets were lost, millions of lives sacrificed. And now we've tracked its movements. It is heading toward your galaxy." The room erupted into chaos. Representatives shouted over one another, their voices a mixture of disbelief and fear. Voro raised his hand, calling for order. "Captain Ross," Voro said, his tone measured, "you expect us to believe this? That such a force exists and that it now threatens us?" Ross's eyes hardened. "Believe what you will, Chancellor. But know this, humanity does not deal in lies. We have faced the abyss and lived to warn others. The choice to prepare is yours." In the observation deck, Lyra's team worked furiously to analyze the holographic data. "Chief, this energy signature, it's consistent with the fluctuations we detected in their fleet," Raoul reported. "What are you saying?" Lyra asked, her voice sharp. "I think they're ships. They've been infused with technology, derived from this abyss. It's part of how they survived," Raoul explained. Lyra's antennae twitched with alarm. "If that's true, then their warning isn't just altruism. They need us as much as we might need them." As the hologram faded, Ross stepped forward again. "We do not seek to impose ourselves upon you. Humanity's path is one of independence. But we have seen what the abyss can do, and we would not wish that fate upon any species. Together, we can prepare. Divided, you will fall." Chancellor Voro leaned back in his seat, his expression unreadable. "You ask for trust, Captain Ross. But trust is earned, not demanded. What proof can you offer that your intentions are genuine?" Ross's gaze didn't waver. "We offer ourselves as proof. Send your scientists to study our ships, your strategists to learn our tactics. Question us, challenge us, but do not ignore this warning. The abyss is coming, whether you believe it or not." As the session ended, the council remained divided. Some representatives saw the humans as potential allies, while others viewed them with suspicion. Lyra returned to her lab, her mind racing with possibilities. She stared at the data, the fluctuating energy readings, and the haunting image of the abyss. "Chief," Raoul said cautiously, "if the abyss is real, what do we do?" Lyra didn't look up. "We do what humanity did," she said. "We adapt. We survive." Unveiling the true power. The Galactic Council's laboratories buzzed with activity as a select team of scientists, including Lyra, examined the human technology. The humans had granted limited access to one of their smaller ships, a vessel they called the Sentinel-class cruiser. It was a diplomatic gesture, but Lyra suspected it was also a calculated display of power. The cruiser floated in a secure docking bay, its dark, angular design a stark contrast to the smooth, organic shapes of most Galactic Council ships. The surface seemed to shimmer faintly, as if alive. Lyra ran her claws over the hull, her antennae twitching with unease. "It's unlike anything we've ever seen," she murmured. "This material, it's adaptive. Self-repairing, maybe." Ral, standing beside her, tapped his datapad. The energy readings are off the charts. It's as if the ship is drawing power from an endless source. Lyra's mind raced. Could it be abyss-derived? She speculated aloud. Ral hesitated, his feathers ruffling. If it is, that means they've not just survived the abyss. They've harnessed it. Meanwhile, in the Council's central chamber, Captain Adrian Ross stood before a gathering of military strategists. On a massive display, a hologram of the Sentinel-class cruiser rotated slowly, its specifications outlined in glowing detail. Ross's officers flanked him, their silence adding to the weight of his words. "This is just one of many ships in our fleet," Ross began, his tone matter-of-fact. "It is designed for adaptability and resilience, capable of operating in hostile environments where no other vessel could survive." General Kor, the towering military leader of the Council's forces, folded his arms. "Impressive," he admitted. "But raw power is not enough. What's the secret behind its resilience?" Ross's gaze didn't falter. "The Sentinel class, like all our ships, is powered by what we call the Singularity Core. It's a technology born out of necessity, capable of generating immense energy while adapting to external threats. It is both our greatest weapon and our greatest responsibility." "And where did this technology come from?" Kor pressed. Ross paused, his expression unreadable. "From studying the abyss, we turned its destructive nature against itself." The room fell silent. The implications were staggering. The abyss, a force that had consumed entire civilizations, had been weaponized by humanity. Lyra's analysis team worked tirelessly, delving into the Sentinel systems. Every discovery seemed to defy the laws of physics as they understood them. The Singularity Core was the most baffling of all. "It's not just an energy source," Ral said, his voice tinged with awe. "It's intelligent. It's making decisions, adapting to our scans, even blocking some of our probes." Lyra's claws clicked against the lab's console as she frowned. "If it's that advanced, then it's not just technology. It's a partnership. The humans aren't just using the abyss. They're coexisting with it." Ral looked uneasy. "That could be dangerous. What if they lose control?" Lyra's antennae twitched. "That's what we need to find out." Back in the council chamber, Ross continued his presentation. "We're not here to flaunt our power or impose our will," he said. "We're here because we believe unity is the only path to survival. The abyss does not discriminate. It will consume all life if left unchecked. Together, we can stand against it." A representative from the Avian Syndicate, her feathers gleaming, spoke up. "Captain Ross, your technology is extraordinary, but can we trust that it won't turn against us? How do we know your Singularity Core won't bring the abyss to our doorstep?" Ross's jaw tightened. "Trust is earned, not given. That's why we've opened our technology for your scrutiny. Study it. Test it. If you find fault, challenge us. But do not mistake our openness for weakness. Humanity has faced annihilation and emerged stronger. We offer you the same strength." The room murmured with uneasy agreement. Ross's confidence was compelling, but the shadow of doubt lingered. As the session ended, Lyra returned to her lab, her mind buzzing with possibilities and fears. The humans' technology was both a marvel and a mystery. She stared at the glowing schematics of the Singularity Core on her monitor. "Chief," Ral said, breaking her concentration, "the Council will have to decide soon. Do we trust them?" Lyra didn't look up. "Trust isn't the issue," she said quietly. "The real question is whether we can afford not to." Above the central planet, the human fleet remained in formation, a silent reminder of the power they wielded. And aboard the flagship, Ross watched the stars, his mind already on the battles yet to come. The secret war. The Galactic Council's private chamber was dimly lit, the weight of secrecy pressing down on the air. Only the highest-ranking representatives were present, their faces drawn with unease. Chancellor Voro presided over the meeting, his sharp eyes fixed on Captain Adrian Ross, who stood in the center of the room like an immovable pillar. "Captain Ross," Voro began, his voice steady but cold. "Your fleet's power is undeniable, and your warnings of the abyss are concerning. But there are questions you have yet to answer, questions that demand truth." Ross nodded, his expression unreadable. "Ask what you will, Chancellor. Humanity hides nothing." Voro's gaze didn't waver. "You speak of survival and strength. Yet we know nothing of the war you fought to achieve this. Who were your enemies, and what did you sacrifice to emerge victorious?" The room fell silent. The weight of the question hung heavy, and even Ross hesitated before speaking. "Our war was unlike any you can imagine," he said finally. "It began with invaders, a species we call the Galaxis. They saw Earth as weak, fractured. They underestimated us." A hologram flickered to life in the center of the room, showing the Galaxis ships, sleek, insectoid vessels swarming over a devastated Earth. "Their technology was superior," Ross continued. "Their numbers overwhelming. They decimated our defenses, enslaved our people. But humanity has a gift. We adapt. We learned their tactics, stole their technology, and turned their weapons against them." The hologram shifted to show human ships, crude at first, then increasingly sophisticated, engaging the Galaxis. The audience watched in grim fascination as humanity's counterattacks grew more coordinated, more devastating. "We defeated them," Ross said, "but they were only the beginning." Lyra watched the feed from her lab, her claws clicking anxiously. The images of Earth's ruins and humanity's desperate battles sent a chill through her. "They faced annihilation and won," Ral murmured beside her. "But at what cost?" Lyra didn't answer. She could feel the answer coming. Ross's hologram shifted again, this time showing a dark, swirling mass devouring fleets and planets. "The abyss came next," he said. "It didn't invade like the Galaxis. It consumed. Entire systems vanished overnight. No warnings, no survivors. It was unlike anything we had ever encountered." A representative from the Aquatic Alliance spoke, her translucent skin pale with fear. "And yet you survived." Ross nodded. "Barely. We fought the abyss for decades. At first we tried to flee, but it followed. Then we studied it. We learned its patterns, its weaknesses. We discovered that it is not just a force, it is alive." The room erupted into murmurs. Alive. A sentient force capable of consuming entire civilizations. "We developed the Singularity Core from what we learned," Ross continued. "It allowed us to fight back, to push the abyss away from our systems. But the cost was high. Entire colonies sacrificed themselves to buy us time. Millions died, and Earth became a battleground unlike any other." Lyra's lab was silent except for the hum of machinery. The team stared at the images of the abyss, its tendrils reaching for distant stars. Ral's feathers were ruffled in distress. "Chief," he said quietly, "they're not just warning us. They're recruiting us." Lyra's antennae twitched. "And if we refuse?" Ral didn't answer, but the silence spoke volumes. Back in the chamber, Ross's voice grew quieter. "We are not here to boast or to threaten. We are here because we know what's coming. The abyss is moving toward this galaxy, and when it arrives, you will face what we faced. Alone, you will fall. Together, we might have a chance." "Chief," Ral said, his voice hesitant, "do you think we made the right choice?" Lyra stared at the starfield outside the window, the faint outlines of the human fleet glowing in the distance. "We chose to fight," she said softly. "Now we'll see if it was enough." Above the Council's central planet, the human fleet began to reposition. Humanity's war was no longer theirs alone. The galaxy had chosen to stand together, and the abyss was coming.